Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to see how we can build dashboards using Python and Quarto so that you can put together dashboards like the one you see on the screen with different types of components, different types of graphs, even different pages that have tables and some interactivity in them. We'll start with the basics and kind of work our way up to this. There's no prereqs to watch this video, but it might be helpful to check out the recent Quarto crash course we posted, which I'll link in the description. And if you work more in the R space, I might also recommend checking out Mine's recent tutorials on Quarto dashboards, which are also linked in the description. To get started, there's a GitHub repo that has some data in it. So it specifically has some Airbnb data, both on all-time listings ratings and some specific reviews that the Airbnbs were given. This data came from a site called InsideAirbnb.com and basically downloaded some data from the Boston area there. I augmented it very slightly, but I feel like it's a good data source to use to kind of build a real-world-esque dashboard with Quarto and Python. All of that's linked in the description. In addition, the finished dashboard file that we'll have complete after this video will be found there. And you can also see what libraries are needed via this requirements.txt. But we'll start from scratch, so I'm going to just delete all of this stuff. And the first thing we'll want to do is create a QMD file. So I'll call this dashboard.qmd. And when you're building a dashboard in Quarto, we always want to start with specifying our parameters, and specifically we'll specify the format dashboard. And if some of this is not seeming familiar, again, there's a Quarto crash course linked in the description. Recommend checking that out. But you don't need to watch that to see this video. And we can go ahead and just render a basic dashboard. So maybe I give this a title too. Rental dashboard. And I can just add some random headers here. How about that? So we'll see we have a very basic dashboard. Given this gives us the title over here in the top left, I can just name this something like Overview. And I can start filling in contents of our dashboard here that makes sense. So the first thing is probably worth knowing about with Quarto dashboards is the concept of adding rows and adding cells within the row. So we can add 2 rows here. And basically, we can add different Python blocks. So I'm going to add Python code like this. This is kind of standard Quarto stuff. And maybe I'll just print hello world here. And I'll copy this and paste it a few times, just so you can kind of see how things are laid out. And maybe I paste it twice in this second one. So we have our overview page, and we have 2 rows. So this is a first row with 4 hello worlds, and a second row with 2 hello worlds. And if I run this, we get a layout like this. We can do some other stuff to this. So imagine I wanted the height of this to be only like 10%. I wanted it to be much tighter. And then I wanted the rest of this stuff to fill in much more space. I can start specifying different details of my rows like this. So now our hello worlds up the top are much smaller. And there's other ways we can modify this even further. Other things worthwhile knowing about right at the start here is you can add like titles to your cards by doing the #pipe syntax and doing something like title. If you do that, you'll see different parameters that you have access to. So maybe if you wanted output to be false and not to show up that code, you could do things like that. There's different options we have here, but if I just add title rental overview, we'll see that it gives it a little label like that. Might not be the clearest for that cell specifically, but I could go down here. Let's say add it to this one and rerun this. And we see the card pops up like this. So we can start titling the different charts that we have in our dashboard using this. Obviously, though, a bunch of hello worlds isn't the most useful thing. So I recommend knowing what you have access to. So we have access to like showing all sorts of different plots in Python. So I could use Plotly here, I could use Matplotlib, I could use Altair, etc. Bunch of different graphing libraries all could be embedded here. I also have access to some Quarto specific dashboard elements. So one that I specifically like are these cards called value boxes. So I'm going to remove this height real quick, and maybe I might just call this like high level stats. This won't show up in my dashboard anywhere, but it's probably good to give a descriptive name so you know what type of code elements you want to include in that row. And I guess another thing worth mentioning is, in addition to running our code like this, we can also add this parameter orientation and make that, I think, rows. Let's see if this works. And it basically just styles things. Oh, wait, let's try it one more time. Columns. Basically just formats things. Instead of this defining a row, this now defines a column. So everything within it is, a row within that column. So it's just reversing things. But I'll remove that for now. It's good to know about, though. And then if you wanted to specify a height, or I guess a width of your row, you would just similarly do width equals 30% when you have that orientation equals, or orientation columns specified. So we'll see that these will shrink just like that. So some good basic stuff to know about, but let's get into some more interesting things. So I mentioned these value boxes. So let's add some value boxes and actually load in our data and just start doing some meaningful stuff. If you ever forget about what value boxes are or how to use them, I recommend just looking up value boxes, Quarto. Go to the docs and you'll find all sorts of useful stuff. Somewhere on this page, I'm sure we'll find the value boxes, and sure enough, here we are. I'm going to just copy an example value box. Maybe I'll do one that's a little bit more sophisticated. So I'll do something like this, and I will paste in this cell. And we don't have anything called comments right now, so I'll just give this a random number. OK, so comments per day, 45. And it's taking this primary color. There's some built-in options here. We could do something like secondary. If we run that, it's going to take a secondary color based on a theme that we can specify in our YAML at the top. So if I did dark theme, or let me think, I think there's a theme called like Cosmo. We'll probably see a different secondary color pop up, and we'll see a different style. So looking into themes is another cool option here. I'll just use the built-in theme. But the secondary color here is dependent on the theme you use. You can also, though, pass in just like random hex colors, or I think some English named colors work. But if I pass in a random hex color, we get a bubble that looks like this. All good stuff to know about. These icons are interesting. These come from the Bootstrap icons. So if we look at Bootstrap icons, I'll link this in the description. Anything we see here and anything we search up, so imagine I'm doing a dashboard on Airbnb listens, so maybe I want a house. If we copy the name house, then we'll see that icon pop up. It's all built in nicely to Quarto. So I'm going to paste in house, and we'll see this icon change. Cool. And maybe I wanted to change the title. Title will be like number of listings that we have in our Airbnb, of Airbnbs that we have. OK, that looks good. Maybe we did want this height to just fill like, I don't know, 25% of our space. And I'm going to paste in a couple more value boxes. So we'll do one more, one more. So now we have 3 value boxes. And how about we have one value box that's the number of listings. One value box is number of reviews. And then ones are maybe our average review rating. Makes sense to have different values for each of these. So number of reviews, what might be a good icon, maybe some sort of like piece of paper or something. I don't know what would happen if I look up count. Maybe, yeah, person. I kind of like that. Number of reviews. Use the person one. Icon is just called person, lowercase person. And then maybe this last one is going to be average review rating. So maybe it's like a star. I feel like that makes sense. Is there a star, or star fill? I might use star fill. Star fill. And now if we rerun this, we get something that looks like this. And maybe I don't actually like star fill because I thought it would just be white, but it is filling in based on the theme, I think. So I'm going to just leave it open. Cool. And I might just leave these colors as the secondary colors of the theme that we're using. All right, now let's actually fill in the real values here for these parts of our dashboard. So let's load in some code. I often do this either, maybe even above where I start my pages to kind of know this is like the setup code. So I'm going to go ahead and do Python here at the top. And if we look at where our files are, we have files called listings.csv and reviews.csv. Let's go ahead and look at these. So listings.csv. One cool thing within VS Code is you have the ability to preview CSVs. And this might be very small and hard for people to see. Try to zoom in a bit. But it has all sorts of information on different Airbnb listings. Again, this is pretty much real data. It's coming from this inside Airbnb site. This is for the Boston area. So we have some Boston Airbnbs here. All sorts of information about them. And we'll say that this is like the all-time ratings and whatnot. So you see there's like a ratings column in here. Somewhere in here, there's different ratings. I think we're getting there. Like review score, different types of ratings out of 5. Kind of all time, we'll say they are. And we also have this reviews.csv table. If I zoom in on this, we have specific comments that people have left. Open up this column a bunch. We actually have textual information about people's stays along with a rating that they gave the place. So in like a real world context, you might have these two different kind of data sources and you might kind of aggregate them and tie them together for your dashboard. Right now we're dealing with static data. We're not like actually pulling from an API, but we can kind of write our code in such a way where we could easily replace it with API calls if we needed to. So what I might do here is I might create like a helper file. I might call this like data helpers.py. And I might create some functions here. So I might import pandas as PD. I might do like a def load listings, and that would just return pd.csv data/listings. We don't actually have a data folder. Maybe I should have put it that way. Listings.csv, and I might have a function called load reviews that just loads the reviews this way. The reason that I'm creating these functions is imagine that you did want to have some sort of sophisticated logic here. You wanted to be able to specify like a start date or something for the reviews, an end date, or maybe you wanted some API logic in here. You could put that all in the dashboard QMD file, but it sometimes makes sense to keep things clean by isolating it and putting it in its own functions in its own file. So I'm just kind of showing that we can do it, but we're going to keep ours very simple. It's just literally loading our CSV files, but I'll make some sort of comment like showing functions that you could augment to load data in, Oh, it had a good autocomplete there. Something like that. And then we go to our dashboard to QMD. We can import we probably do the same import. I don't know if we're doing this double. Import from data helpers, import load listings and load reviews. We can set our reviews and our listings like this. And that should be good there for getting our data. And then if we wanted to actually populate our data, I guess one thing we could do is you can run cells here and actually see if things are loading properly. If I look up listings in this interactive table, we see that we do get stuff. I could run commands like listings.columns and just get the columns in that. I could do the same thing with like reviews. And I try to make my text very big on the screen so that you can all see, but sometimes as a result, you don't see much meaningful stuff. But we can access both of that interactively by running cells here in our VS Code window. But we can go ahead and actually populate these with real values. If I do length listings, we'll get the number of listings in our data. If I do length reviews, we'll get the number of reviews. And maybe this like load reviews was over a 6-month window. It's just always whenever we run this Quarto report, it's getting the last 6 months. You could augment the function to do that. And then average review rating, this would be a little bit more complex. We actually need to kind of know what columns and stuff we have in our reviews. So let's just do that real quick. Reviews dot columns. We have date, month, year. Let's look at the head real quick. Month is a number that could very easily help us. I guess we just really just need to take an average over the overall for all the reviews. We're not doing anything fancy right now. So for this last value, we could pass in some code here. We already have it as a Python cell, so let's think how we would do this. Maybe make it an F string. Reviews. Overall was the column. And I think we can just take the mean. And I do like this syntax with F strings, show two decimal places as a float. Close this off, and let's rerun our dashboard. Cool. And now we actually have some real data here in our dashboard on some info on our listings and reviews. Now let's maybe add some useful graphs to our data. So what we might want to know about is how have our listings been trending over time. So maybe we add a row. Our next row is like plots. And let's think what we might want to do here. We might want to aggregate by month. So we have our reviews, and we had that month column we just saw. So if we wanted to plot the data, the average review by like month or something like that, let's think how we could do that. We could probably do a Matplotlib plot pretty easily. We could do, maybe we import, I kind of like loading in all my libraries at the top. You could either do that at the top or do it in the cell that you need the code. I think we just need these libraries for now. If we plot, we'll start out by doing a plot that is ratings by month. That's going to be equal to reviews.group by date. I want to group by month specifically. I guess the other way that they're doing it would work. And then I want to take the mean, but I only want the overall column. And then I want to probably reset my index. Let's print ratings by month dot head. Reviews is not defined. OK, got to run this cell first. This looks pretty good. Is that all of the months that we have? Is there any more months? Oh, it's just the head. So I guess if I printed the whole thing, we should see that 6th month. Cool. See this. That looks good. So now we just need to plot this. And we could plot it by doing the following. I could do plt.plot ratings by month, month, ratings by month overall. This should do it. Rerun it. Look at that. And you're going to want to customize it and style it a bit more. So maybe you add a title like average rating past 6 months. So we have a little title now for our graph. What did I do wrong? I think it's always a good idea to like add a thicker line. I think just when you're dealing with this, everything should probably be a bit bigger. So, and maybe we would want, instead of using numbers here, we would want to actually plot the month names. I use GitHub Copilot in my VS Code, and I often will do something like make my Matplotlib plot line thicker, make the axis labels larger. That's a good start. Let's see if it generates me good code. I like this overall. Let's try this. I want my maybe even a little thicker. Try 4 here. Yeah, it's a little bit easier to read. I want the actual tick marks bigger, so make plot tick marks bigger. Oh, look at that. Let's see how this does. Okay, it's showing all sorts of weird stuff now. If you do a colon after your plot.show, it won't show these intermediate steps. Little quirk to know about. Did that do anything here? Let me make this like much bigger. Okay, that's definitely making things bigger. So you can kind of play around with this as you see fit. That's a decent average rating chart. And really as someone that's running Airbnbs, what I would want to know is like, okay, in the past 6 months, are we trending upwards? Are we trending downwards? That's going to start helping me understand overall trends. So maybe we're implementing a bunch of solutions to help improve our work. Based on this trend line, I kind of have a sense of, okay, are the changes we're making actually working or not? Cool. And then maybe we wanted to replace the month with the actual month name. I think we can use the calendar library to do that. I'm curious if I could also replace numerical months 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with their correct month abbreviation. Jan, Feb, March, April, June, shoot, I forgot about May, June. Let's see if this code works. Yeah, I mean, this is going to work. It's just doing a quick replace. Yeah, that did fix things. Wow, Copilot is pretty crazy. So I guess just if you're curious, if you go in your VS Code, you can go to extensions, look up Copilot. That's what I'm using. I think it's a paid product. You can also check out something called Codium as like a free way to do this in your VS Code editor. Just helpful thing to know about. All right, so that's a ratings by month plot. Maybe we also wanted to add a plot that's just a histogram of the counts of each different type of rating. So rating counts, I'll call this. That's going to be equal to reviews overall.value counts.sort index. That looks right. We can print that out real quick just to check. Run this. And this looks good. This looks right. If we have a 4.64 overall, you'd expect most of them to be 5 stars and much less to be 1 and 2 and 3 stars. So if we plot dot, you could either do a bar chart or you could probably do a histogram via Matplotlib. Cool. And I think one thing that I would recommend is passing in a color that's similar to our secondary color. So like what I might do, open up a web browser real quick. So if you touch this button, you open up a web browser. If we look at what the dashboard looks like in the web, I use this little inspector tool. I could inspect this color, have it, and then I could make my line colors. So I think somewhere in the plot, I think I could pass in a color. And now if we look at our line, we see that's that same gray color. Similarly, I could pass in the color here. Get this to have that same color. I just like having uniformity in the colors that is in a dashboard that I'm working on. You could also, like as a better practice, you might want to define your color at the top. If there's a color you're going to be using, and then just pass in that color in the different spots that takes in a color. Cool. All right, let's maybe also add another row, and we'll make an actual map of our listings. The best way to do this, I find, is using this Folium library. So I'm going to import Folium here up at the top. And I usually forget how to do a Folium plot without looking it up. So I might just look up Folium map Python. Or like, let's say we have lat and longitudes because we do for our listing. So Folium, lat and longitude, Python example. And I mean, there's a bunch of different examples that I'm sure you can find. This looks like one too. I'll just copy this little code snippet. Paste it in here. And our map center. So let's look at our listings again. We have columns called latitude and longitude here. So we want to grab those. So we have our listings. They're going to be, we want to grab the latitude and longitude. The map center then is going to be listings.latitude.mean. Same thing for our longitude. So we could either grab the column this way, or you could use the bracket syntax. I think that's the column. Is it a uppercase? Yep, uppercase, uppercase. Okay. This is Boston. And then we want to iterate basically over our listings and add markers like this. So what I could do is for index row in listings.iter_rows, look at that, it auto-completes it pretty well. And let's see what our output looks like if we run this. It's saying it doesn't know about a latitude. That's weird. I don't know if it's like auto-capitalizing it. Oh, it auto-capitalizes it in the preview for whatever reason. Interesting. Okay, let's see what this does. Okay, we're not seeing anything if I expand that, we see this weirdness here. And I know there's a solution to that. But what we want to do to see our actual map is just put my map at the bottom here with Folium. It should display. OK, look at that. We got our map hidden here at the bottom. We see all this weirdness. You can fix the weirdness. Sometimes it shows intermediate outputs in your cells within your cards in a Quarto dashboard. If you assign these intermediate steps to a variable, we'll kind of fix that issue. I also can add a height here, which is, I think, a pixel value. Because right now, if we scroll down, we see that this is like this random height. If I specify a height more explicitly, it will help kind of center things. So we actually see what we expect to on our screen. If I pop this open, pull this in, we have our information. Again, I maybe make these things a little bit bigger, these the labels and whatnot, but shows our different properties. One cool thing that we can do is we can add custom markers here on our graph, and we can even actually add information about each listing when we hover over these markers. So I might paste something in, and this will make sense in a second. I can add some custom HTML to each marker that we add. So I might paste in something like this. We add this basically custom tooltip that has our name, the rating of the property, and the price per night. And then I can add a tooltip to our marker, specify it as tooltip. And then I can also specify a icon, I believe. Yeah, icon, Folium icon, color equals blue, icon equals home. Let's see what this looks like. I think because we have a tooltip, we don't need this pop-up. Did I screw something else up, though? Oh, this indentation's off. I think it should work now. Cool. Instead of having color blue, there's only limited colors here in the Folium icon. I'm going to do color gray. And that looks pretty similar to our other colors. I think there's even a light gray. So you could pick one of those colors, whatever you think is better, but it kind of blends in with the rest of our details. And you can see information about each of these listings. You could zoom in, look a little bit more about them. All right, cool. Let's add some different pages to our dashboard that has, maybe some interactive tables. So I'll add another page. I'll call this like listing details. And then I'll do another page called recent reviews. I'm going to just kind of do some placeholders here. OK, let's look at that. Listing details, recent reviews. And we want to add some tables here. One library that I like a lot for showcasing tables inside of Quarto is this itables library. So I'm going to do import itables. And then what we can do down here is we can just do something like Python itables.show. And we can do just like our listings to start. Let's see what this looks like. We see we got a table here. It's got a lot of stuff in it, so we probably only want to have certain columns instead of having everything. But it is cool. We could search then by just ones in the south end. How about just Beacon Hill? So there's different ways you can search these interactive tables, but maybe we wanted to just specify specific columns related to ratings. So rating columns, yeah, these are the basic columns that we want. And now if I do listings, how about rating? Let's see what this gives us. So now we have a table that looks like this, which is pretty good. Obviously, it's not super helpful, though, because we have these rating columns, but we also would want like the name of the property or something. So I might do like, call this display columns, and I might add, my name here of the property, maybe the neighborhood or something. Maybe I also add the price as one of my display columns. Rerun this. And we see we get something that looks like this. If I then open this up in its full window, we get something that looks like this. And one thing that's cool is if I had this, if I was trying to share this with a team member to help them understand our rentals, I would probably give them, this table and tell them, hey, maybe look at like the reviews that have the least amount of accuracy, or the least cleanliness, and we can kind of start targeting which homes to fix up based off of this, etc. So that's one table. I found sometimes you can customize this and tweak this in a way that makes more sense. Like, for example, if you wanted to make sure it wrapped and fit into the space of your screen, you can add some custom CSS to allow for this. Let me see how you might do that. You might do something like in our import itables, we would maybe also want to do import itables.options as something like this. Let me double check. Yeah, as opt. And then you can do something like opt.classes and specify some classes that should affect things. I could define a class called wrapText, and then I could basically define that class. So I could create a new file called like style.css, the class name wrapText, and I could even, if you wanted to see like this work, make this, give it a certain color or something too. And then in my dashboard QMD file, I'm going to do style, or I think CSS, and we'll do style.css. We run this, and we see we get it wrapped basically in a different way. I mean, basically we can just it just formats it a bit differently. I'm not going to go into huge details here, but just kind of know that you could add this style.css, and you can style different elements on the screen as needed. Okay, that's pretty good. If we wanted recent reviews table, we could do something similar. We would probably have to join our reviews with the listing. So reviews joined might equal this, basically, and then we would want to display probably the name of the listing, the date, and the comments of our reviews. And we could do then instead this, reviews joined, display columns, and let's see what this table looks like. Cool. I also might actually recommend adding an overall score. And the reason for that is if you're doing an Airbnb listings review, it's sometimes really helpful to sort by lowest rated comments, and you can kind of use these reviews to help you identify specific things that you want to improve in your dashboard. So I like adding the overall there. Again, let's look at what this looks like in our web tab. Cool. Could search, if I wanted to just only see things for Comfy Beacon Hill, Studio, number 13, you can do it this way. We see things dynamically update. So, if I only wanted the stylish downtown studio, I can start typing it in, filter by that. Cool. This all looks good. Honestly, that's a lot of the basics. I think one thing that's worth showing is that we could also put like a Plotly graph in here instead of using Matplotlib. So to do that, a similar Plotly graph would be something like this. So we have, let's say we wanted to show this based on the neighborhood of the listing. Some code here that does all of this, and this will be in the final code that is shared in the GitHub link. Oh, it's trying to use reviews joined here to do this. I'm going to define this up at the top. So we now see some information about different neighborhoods as part of our dashboard. Cool, cool. One thing that you might be wondering about as you start getting comfortable with building dashboards in Quarto versus, let's say, Shiny is like, when do you use one over the other? I think that if you're sharing something kind of at static intervals, you don't always need the data to be the most up-to-date. It's totally fine to use Quarto. One thing that I'd recommend is to do embed resources equals true. Run this. We look at the files we have access to. One of them is going to be this dashboard.html file. One cool thing about Quarto is that this file, this dashboard.html, you could share it with a team member or something, and they have access to this whole little dashboard just via that HTML file. Whereas if this was a Shiny app, they would need to run a server or something to have this up and running. So it's kind of cool. You could generate a static dashboard basically, and do that on every month basis. And then as long as someone can open up the HTML file in a web browser like this, you can see all this information for the, let's say, last 6 months. So yeah, if it's a static intervals, I think Quarto is good. If you need it to always be living and you want additional interactivity, so imagine you wanted additional interactivity where there was a sidebar and you could toggle on or off different neighborhoods, then it might make sense to go to Shiny. And we've posted tutorials on Shiny, building dashboards in Shiny with Python. I'll put a link for that in the description as well. Check out that series if you want to really understand some more interactive dashboards. One cool thing that you can do, though, is you can actually specify server Shiny and start combining Quarto with Shiny. So you can do stuff like add a sidebar and I'm going to just kind of preview this. I'm not going to go into the details here. Maybe in a future video we'll go into the details, but I could do from Shiny import reactive and UI, and then I could do UI.input checkbox group. I could specify neighborhood. This is a cool autocomplete. And then I'll make this a list. Specify a checkbox group like this. And then basically have like toggle controls, and these toggle controls actually updates the data in here. So a real quick, like I guess, preview of that is that maybe I also wanted all of these active to be, let's see. Selected. I also want this list. I want all of them to be selected to start. You could imagine we have a reactive calc def df, or like filtered reviews. That is like this. So this basically takes our reviews joined, but filters out the neighborhoods that are selected, or only filters in the neighborhoods that are selected. And then you could imagine down here where we render the table, instead of having this code, I might do something like @render table, return filter reviews, and I'll show you what this looks like. Go. You go to that, I think, recent reviews table. It's not showing up for whatever reason. I'm going to real quick just try to make this, put this in the same cell as my table down below. Oh, oops. This should be is in input.neighborhood, like this. Paste it in one thing real quick. Okay, it was getting mad because I had this embed resources. But as we can see here, if I pop this open, and we look at our dashboard now, if I untoggle these, we ultimately get no data. So there's cool interactivity you can add by combining Shiny with Quarto, but I'm not going to go into huge details there right now. I'm going to remove that. Shiny code quick. I'm going to put this back to basically what we had before. And then a final step I would recommend is if you wanted to host this somewhere, like, so I shared that you can, do the embed resources and then just share the dashboard.html file with someone. But if you wanted an actual web URL that you could go to, you could add this code. To a GitHub repo, commit it, added a Quarto dashboard, and then push it. And if you use a platform like Posit Connect Cloud, and if the repo that you're working off of is public, so I'm going to go to Posit Connect Cloud. I could publish a new Quarto project, Quarto projects, master, and then dashboard.qmd. I can go ahead and publish this. It looks like it's mad at me because I didn't commit that file called data helpers. Quarto, find the repo as long as it's public and you specify the dashboard QMD file, you can publish it. And we get our dashboard. I can make this full screen. I can look at the different tables. I can look at recent reviews. And I can even go ahead and I can share the URL with a teammate this way as well. All right, that's all we're going to cover about Python dashboards in this video. Hopefully you found it useful. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to throw it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I guess actually, as I'm concluding, one thing that I should mention is that I ran into some issues with certain versions of this itables library. So specifically for this tutorial, I was using a itables 2.0 as my version. So if you're running into any itables issues, maybe check that out. All right, that's all we're going to cover in this video. If you enjoyed this video, throw it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. More Quarto and Python videos coming soon. Until next time, everyone, peace out.